So the theme of the conference has been about transformation, and the title of our panel is the cable industry, I think traditional media in general, keeping up? So just to kind of frame the whole conversation this morning, when I sat on the sales side, so your side, and let's get the ground rules straight. You're not allowed to ask me questions, okay? I'm the moderator. I'm taking moderator privileges.
We do not agree to that term.
We have agreed to that term.
You may lapse though into.
That's right. They threatened to turn the questions back on me, and I was like, no, that's not happening.
When we got stuck.
So when I sat on the sales side, on your side, I thought that the television industry was transforming. I thought that we were unlocking content, we were putting it out on multi-platform, we were looking and kind of moving ahead in terms of one source measurement, and just cross-platform selling was becoming realistic. Now that I sit on the agency side and I see how clients are demanding more ROI, how digital is selling real time and data and all of the things that you can do in terms of optimization and targeting that television can't do. Is the television industry, is cable really keeping up? So, Eric, do you want to start?
Yeah, I would say that I think that television is progressing. I think the amount of time that at ESPN we're spending talking about this internally and talking about it with customers definitely kind of projects the idea that this is something that's of interest to us. I think that technology is going to continue to evolve to allow us to be able to do some things that we're currently doing on the digital side around data and around attribution. But I think at the same time, it's not just if you could, it's about if you should. Right. And I think for all the great things that have happened, look, we have a very robust digital business and a digital video business. So we are in the digital space selling highlights and live form ESPN shows, and we're testing technologies that work there that someday will be available on the linear side. Okay. And I think from our standpoint, as good as all that digital attribution and data sets and targetability have been, there has been some other things around that ecosystem that I do not think have been great for the industry and great for advertisers, marketers.
Let's talk about that a little bit more.
There's been issues with traffic fraud. There's been issues with almost the buy-sell cycle of how things are transacted, and I think that the system kind of rejects difficult. And I think what the television system has been has been a very more fluid system in the past. So I think as we learn some of these things and apply it to the linear side, I think you're going to see a lot of growth.
So do you think it's 2 years out, 5 years out, as some of this starts to migrate, or are we closer than we've been?
I think we're closer than we've been. 2 to 5 years is probably a good estimate.
Still?
But there'll still be steps.
Right.
But I think there'll be steps in a way that'll end up being very positive. I think very positive for marketers and for media companies.
Great. Okay. Mel.
I think that we're investing a tremendous amount of resource and a tremendous amount of money in getting better at data. In addition to Nielsen, we make it a point to invest in services like Rentrack. I see Bruce down here in front. TRA. There's a tremendous amount of data out there, but it is also tremendously expensive. And I think one of the issues that we have in this near term of a couple of years is getting over this hurdle of currency. All the deals come back to some common denominator, and that common denominator right now is price and CPM. So I think until we figure out a way to factor in this richer data into that discussion in sort of that seamless way, we're going to struggle to get to a point where our data offering is a behavioral analysis, where we're looking at factors other than just the cost per thousand. And I think this currency issue is a big issue because every time it feels like we're getting closer to a Nielsen product that's going to combine measurement across platforms and combine other factors, it seems like it just moves back another quarter or another half year. Right. And that, I think, is a huge hurdle for us to get over.
Arlene.
We've done some proprietary things where we're able to measure various forms of engagement and match it back with Nielsen Fusion. And there's certainly information we get out of it. I think we're catching up. I don't think we're in the forefront. And we have to, at least our company, we have for so long, we were late to ad support. We were, all the networks were, and later certainly than you guys and many other of the industry. So we have to move from being a business to business or a business to cable because we were so involved with the affiliates and so much of our revenue came from that, to really understanding the consumer, because that's where the business is going. The advertising revenue is so much more a part of contributing to our revenue that we have to, and we will. It's we're probably not as far ahead as I would say these guys.
So you talk about your affiliate agreements or these MSO rules, and consumers want content when they want it, how they want it. How do you surmount those hurdles, and what are your company doing to deliver content the way consumers want it, given all of the legacy agreements and things that sort of get in the way of that? And then, as Mel, we were talking about, what does the ad model look like in that new world?
Well, the ad model, again, is frustrated a little bit by getting to common measurement across platforms. We can do hybrid deals, we can do separate deals. I don't think that really answers all the questions that advertisers and agencies have in terms of what their reach, what their frequency is, what their stewardship is in a nice, complete package. But I think that we will make tremendous progress on that front as we move forward.
Right.
You think the cross-measurement, if Nielsen ever gets to it, and if we all agree on the methodology they're using, do you think that'll get us further? It must get us a little bit further along, right? I'm not sure it's them, but some cross-measurement.
We're certainly looking at that as sort of the holy grail.
Right.
To the extent that we aggregate viewership back to a piece of content, that makes that content all the more powerful in our world.
Well, it's your content. You want attribution for the audience, right? Wherever it lives, so you should.
Exactly.
But I mean, ESPN obviously digital is such a big play.
We have
so how do you feel about cross measurement, or is just digital so strong on its own?
Cross measurements can be very important, but for now, even just with video measurement, we're about serving sports fans, anytime, anywhere,
Right.
and that's influenced the business strategy for us. So we've done deals with Roku, we've done deals with Apple TV, we've done deals with Xbox Live, and created an opportunity with Watch ESPN for our content and our advertisers to live in those spaces. Mm-hmm. Now what we do is we use freewheel and dynamically ad serve everything on the digital and mobile side, because because of the situation of measurement, and because we think that right now that audience is a different audience. That audience is even more rich and engaged and sought for by marketers, and so it should be done that way. Right. So we have a linear video business, and we figured out a nice way to marry that with how we go to digital. We're working increasingly with television buyers and digital buyers, and we're open to do business either way. Mm-hmm. I will say that one thing that I think will help the digital video business continue to grow is again around, you said currency, Mel, and I would say something around terms and conditions is a lot more elaborate than deal points.
Right.
And the television business has been built on deal points, and the T's and C's and the negotiations for those, even as we come up to this year's upfront, can be very laborious, and can create a lot of pain points in terms of friction just in the system in terms of trying to sell or buy.
A lot of our significant digital business is done convergent with the originals. I mean, that's really where we see them.
And you guys are doing the same thing, convergence deals more than separate digital, or you're selling?
We are moving toward 360 deals, convergence deals, because that seems to be the way to most efficiently kind of replicate the old, huge, efficient scale model that we all enjoyed.
Yeah.
The old scale model had a lot of benefits in that you were able to accumulate reach and frequency very quickly in an efficient way. The business process now, as you sell across these platforms with small incremental audiences, it's become very stressed. Right. So that's the difficulty that we face. We have 5 different sales forces out there now, where we used to essentially have one sales force. Right.
So with all this market fragmentation, do we see programmatic buying becoming something that will actually does it have a place in the TV marketplace going forward?
I think it has some place in the TV marketplace. I mean, we're not involved in any program for it. We've never been able to find a model that worked at all for us, but DR partially is that, so we'll move in that direction. I think DR is partially that at any
rate. So would you put your inventory out there? Mel, you and I talked about this.
We would put certain kinds of inventory out there. We were chuckling before that programmatic is a word that has a lot of different meanings.
A lot of meanings.
When we talk about programmatic, we mean better business process, or we mean automatic.
Right.
Sometimes when I talk to people on the other side of the desk, I think programmatic may mean something like more efficient or cheaper.
Right.
So I think that's the issue that we're going to have to bridge before a lot of inventory, a lot of premium video inventory, goes on to that sort of an exchange.
Well, we're looking at video platforms that will ultimately migrate and handle television. How close is that?
Migrate
And be able to handle programmatic linear television.
Well, it
So
handles, I mean, there's so many transactions in the digital world. They couldn't possibly handle it any other way, There are times we can do it, I guess.
But there's so many transactions in the TV side.
Well, there are,
these
but
days.
there are
It's
certain ones that couldn't possibly work for certain sponsors of originals, or, I mean, we couldn't sell it that way.
If you say that programmatic is the ability to efficiently transact certain types of inventory and apply
infuse new data,
into it,
exactly.
that will happen on the linear side.
Right.
And that will be that'll happen when it's a good business model for both seller and for marketer. That's what my personal take. Right. We're doing a little bit of on the digital side in testing. We obviously announced this past year that we're working with the Magna Consortium, and we're a part of that because also just the whole process from RFP to negotiating, to uploading, to stewarding, to posting right now is a very laborious situation. So part of this is automation. We're very interested in how do you automate some parts of that, allow us to focus on the creative ideation process even more so instead of getting caught up in making sure that units are running or not falling out.
Right.
And I think that from our side, we're certainly willing to test that when the technology does exist to do so. If I have a Duke basketball game and I have a Duke fan who's watching a Duke basketball game, it shouldn't matter which platform they're watching it on.
Right.
And currently, the current model says there's different pricing for each platform. So there's some value to us.
I'm saying automation in terms of infusing data, optimization, all the things that digital can do. Television, I think, can benefit from that type of technology if people are willing to put some inventory out there and test it.
I think that when we look at it, we have certain networks where we have inventory that we think is undervalued. For instance, H2.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think it's auction. I think could actually provide value.
With H2, we have a footprint of about 75 million households. And the negotiation is always, well, you need to start at a CPM that is discounted by 20 or 25% because you're not on a full footprint. But in fact, when you look at the characteristics of the audience for H2, it is as valuable or more valuable than for networks that have full distribution based on.
If you look at targeted buying, you actually could be raising CPMs.
So we'd be very interested, and we've experimented that in the past with Admira and Navic, trying to figure out ways to create a more robust market for some of the inventory in our portfolio that we think is undervalued.
Yeah, and I think that there's a big hurdle we've got to get to with the idea that the television business has no ad serving fees. So the technology that's going to be provided that's going to be able to serve this, that's going to create the pipes to be able to layer in the data, somebody's got to pay for that. Who's going to pay for that?
Right. And is it a separate system or is it hook into legacy systems? That's going to be the challenge.
That's exactly right.
So let's switch topics a little bit. How are you into social media? Everybody's talking. The water cooler is not tomorrow. It's real time. People want to talk about especially television content. What are you guys doing in terms of, are you using Twitter Amplify? Are you on Facebook, Instagram? What are you doing to your, as a consumer and then for an advertising platform?
Yes, we're on everything we can be on.
We're on many of them, and we have a very interesting second screen experience with StorySync, with The Walking Dead, and it encourages live viewing, it encourages a lot of conversation, and The Walking Dead is huge on Twitter.
You think social media made Walking Dead bigger?
What?
Social media made Walking Dead bigger?
Without any question, and many of the other shows.
Does it
has made it bigger.
Or Walking Dead made social media bigger?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a balanced equation. We'll take it either way. I think probably Walking Dead has made social media, that particular show. Mad Men gets an awful lot too. I don't want to get into particular shows, but Walking Dead without any
Our
question.
consumer marketing guys are all over promotion, and the social media is a means of promotion, and I think it's a very powerful tool in that respect. I think we've struggled a bit more to figure out exactly what the value proposition is as an advertising product alongside of our more traditional.
Yeah, it's so inherent as part of sport. I mean, I think if you take a look at the data from last year, we had 17% of all activity around TV shows last year was around ESPN television shows on Twitter.
Right.
So it's a big part of the, it influences the way that we're starting to go to market. If you have Rob King, our head of SportsCenter, says we now have this opportunity to put out what we think the fans want to hear, and we listen back to what they are trending in terms of what's interesting to them and starting to program that way. So in one way, it's shaping just how ESPN thinks about content. And in a second way, for marketers, we have used it as a way to create marketing opportunities and platforms for them. So we have a big deal with Verizon where we're able to send out instant highlights during the game. So while you're actually watching the game, LeBron makes a great dunk, and within a minute, that's being pushed out through all of ESPN platforms as well as through Twitter. And so we're able to put that with a highlight and also a message, an ad about it. We used something around the Super Bowl weekend, which again, we don't have the Super Bowl, but we have the game around the game. And we did a great promotion through a lot of different social media sources that allowed fans to vote for how should the Empire State Building be lit up, in Denver Bronco colors or in Seattle Seahawks colors. And if any of you guys were around and drove home that night from the Met, you saw that it was blue and green. And fortunately, they won, because that would have been awkward if it had been Broncos colors.
So we talked about this a little bit backstage. Netflix, friend or foe?
I don't know who. I'll start off because I know we all have a different point
I'm excited
of
for
view
your guys'
on it.
answers on this one.
At the moment, they're a partner of ours. They certainly have helped us in terms of shows which may not have debuted with an awful lot of viewership, and because of word of mouth, and I'll use Breaking Bad as the best example, there was an awful lot of word of mouth on it, an awful lot, and it grew every year. But then we did marathons, but maybe they wouldn't find it on our marathons. And Mad Men, for those two shows, for certain, it was helpful. Are we concerned about them? You bet we're concerned about them.
Mel?
At the risk of stating the obvious, I struggle to see the value for an advertiser. It's a great...
But it's still taking away from the...
Yeah, it's just...
Right, it's another audience fragmentation, right?
It's audience fragmentation. It's, in my mind, a fairly select cut of the audience that now can't be reached as easily through your marketing budget. So, yeah, I struggle to see the value.
Okay.
I'm live sports, so...
You don't care?
I want to plead the fifth.
Until they start running...
Although I would expect that they're valuable until they're not valuable,
Yeah.
kind of a situation.
Okay. So it's been called the golden age of television. There's so much great content out there. I can't even keep up with half of the things that I love to watch. Explosion of original scripted series. I mean, Arlene, you had some stats.
We looked at something a couple of weeks ago, and I don't have the titles with me, but in 2006, when we were just considering Mad Men, there were 10 cable networks with 31 original scripted series. And this year, right now, there are 17 cable networks with 91. I couldn't name these 91. I mean, they're of different excellence and different value, but that's a tremendous amount of choice for people. It's just a tremendous amount of choice. I was on a plane yesterday and I thought, oh, Ray Donovan, I've never seen that. I'd like to catch up with that. It was 43 minutes long. By the time I took a little nap, ate something, read my magazines, I didn't have the time to catch up with that. There's a lot of stuff. It's very, very difficult to keep up with everything that's going on. Very difficult.
So with the explosion of original series, cable obviously beating broadcast on many nights and on many shows, does cable have an advantage with limited series and the way you're programming in this new world to get the hearts of viewers and content? Is there an advantage in the cable model that doesn't exist on the broadcast model?
With scripted drama, yeah, I think there is an advantage to it, certainly, and I think everybody's been able to see that. But I really do still think it goes back to the quality of the program. I mean, it can be a few episodes. It can be, I don't know. I think we could do, I don't know how many Walking Deads. It astonishes me.
But does limited series get you better actors, better writers, because they're not committed to 22 episodes?
I think there is, just definitely. I think that's probably
running straight through.
At least with our scripted dramas, I believe that's the case.
And I think it's allowed us to really counterpunch a lot more strategically and to launch programs outside of the crush of premiere weeks and find audiences. So I think that we've been able to really use those assets strategically in a way that now has allowed cable to really become the 52-week-a-year foundation.
Right.
In a media plan. I think broadcast has become more of a 26-week, 39-week-a-year business where cable has been very clear from the outset that they wanted to spread those assets across the year in a way that delivered value throughout.
I think the explosion of content available to consumers has just made events that much more important.
I agree. We're talking about live events.
Absolutely, just driven up the notion of event. And for us, we push out 37,000 hours of live content. but we're very much in the event business with the college football playoffs and with the NBA finals and with the US Open tennis tournament, you know, and with the Monday Night Football. I mean, we built a business around big events, and we're seeing the demand for that, and the ability for us to build really interesting platforms is just that much greater.
So in this fragmented world where live events seem to outshadow, do brands matter anymore?
In what way? Yeah,
Well, I mean,
of course brands
ESPN
matter.
has a brand, but if I'm coming to AMC and I'm watching Walking Dead, do I care if it's AMC? Like, does the brand matter?
I think it's become to matter. I mean, I certainly don't think when we had one series on that was Mad Men, I don't know that it would have mattered so much, but I think the more we build up and the more, I mean, this is not a commercial for us, but I really believe it, the more that we assemble a body of work,
Like
something, I think we do become, yes, I think the content is the brand.
I think the brand definitely matters.
especially with a brand like you.
With a brand like, yes, we definitely see that. We definitely see that it becomes the first place that people go.
Right.
In terms of a destination. We also measure the impact of that on marketers. So we're tracking now through an ad tracker what the lift is for brands that get associated with us because of the ESPN brand, and we can compare that to other brands that are in the sports space, and we can demonstrate that. And so we see that it does matter.
Certainly for them, and I would say it took a long while for us to become, we were not a brand, I mean, we were a movie brand, I guess if we wanted to be that, but for the brand we are now, it took a long time to develop, but I think we are.
I think you can obviously see the value of a sports brand. I think with entertainment brands, you know, it is a show that helps drive our brand.
Right.
The Bible, Hatfields. There are any number of big shows that we have that people watch. But I think the reinforcement of the brand or the affirmation of the brand is that when we now create an app for history, we see a tremendous amount of interest in that app and a tremendous amount of people downloading that app. So I think in the world to come, where we will be going to consumers with our product, the brands will become more valuable as we go forward.
We have to track all those brands that exist, right? So we track an ESPN, but
And
we're also
wherever
tracking
it
the Sports
lives,
Center.
right,
The Sports Center
wherever,
brand
right.
is its own
Exactly.
entity, and I think you have to be willing to kind of deal in that space.
Right. So what big live events, I mean, obviously live television is becoming such an important part of marketers' plans, of viewers' plans. What are some big events coming down? I mean, Eric, you probably have 1,000.
Yeah, we just mentioned those, and I would just say that, you know, for everything that has to do with targetability, I think increasingly it's the pendulum swinging back to the idea that it's about engagement, and big events, those big events are the most engaged opportunities for marketers to be able to you know, transact with their customers, and I think that that's kind of a big step forward.
In real time.
In real time, yeah.
Well, we have an inside joke, and it is a joke if there are any reporters in this room. We're doing 14 episodes of Mad Men. We're shooting them now, and we were saying inside, well, we'll create events. We'll take 2 of them a year and put them on for the next 7 years, then you'll have 7 years worth of events. But in truth, we do intend to honor, certainly the way we set Breaking Bad up. I mean, that was a show to honor and to celebrate and to see out in an elegant way, and we will do that with Mad Men. And The Walking Dead, it seems every time it premieres, it's some kind of an event. I mean, we don't do an event, but that's more or less our definition of events.
We've had a bunch of big events, but our last big one was Bonnie and Clyde. And what we did, and what we did there that was a little bit different was that we triple casted across A&E, History, and Lifetime. And it was kind of an interesting model because we were able to cum up a pretty big reach pretty quickly that way. And that's a device that I think we're going to play with probably on a regular basis as a way to reach that huge audience, to create an event, and also to offer marketers the opportunity to tweak creative, to speak more directly to the audience that would be watching on each of those 3 brands. We would have examples where you could tweak the creative to reach a woman's audience or a male audience or more of an adult audience. So we think it's kind of a nice thing to generate a lot of buzz immediately and to allow people to be creative with how they advertise within that.
So the tweaking would be in the advertising creative.
Advertising, yeah.
And we, of course, were very interested in watching how that went for you, the simulcasting across. It was a very interesting thing to do, and we briefly toyed with it for a few things, but it doesn't quite work.
We have 3. We have 3 on the planning table.
So did data infuse those decisions? Yeah. So does data infuse those decisions, or those were sort of let's just test and learn? Was there something that drove you towards that, or it was just trying something?
It was a combination of all of the above, I think. I mean, the data analytics with that really got down to a question of, are we going to cannibalize our own audience? So the data there became more of a defensive look at, can we harm the program by putting it out all at the same time? But we also became convinced that by doing this, that the amount of buzz and the amount of notice generated would far outweigh any cannibalization that we did.
We did this around the college football national championship.
You're streaming
we did
also,
a mega cast, right? So we had on ESPN was the traditional national version, but then we had a coaches talk room. We had talent standing around interacting with the game itself. We had a special feed that was an Auburn feed or Florida State feed. So if you were a Homer fan and you wanted to get the local play-by-play, that was put on the video. And we, for the same thing, it was a little bit of a, let's just try this. It's just, you know, why program against ourselves? Right. We have Watch ESPN, so people could use a tablet and conceivably watch 2 different versions just to see what's going on. And the metrics that came back were great. We're talking right now about doing it during the World Cup on a couple of occasions. It's not official yet, but we're looking at that. And we will definitely do it for next year's national championship.
Interesting. So with and we'll switch topics a little bit. With the pending consolidation of Time Warner and Comcast, which is going to account for 30% of cable homes, does the balance shift towards the providers? And what does that mean for content owners and consumers? Better or worse?
Well, you're hard-pressed to not deal with 30% of the viewers. That's a very, very difficult thing to deal with. And having come from a company whose background was Cablevision, and they were providers and we were content providers, they were distributors, I got an interesting view of that business. And even though we were owned by the same people, it was really who had the most leverage at any one point in time. And I think, to some extent, you're going to see more consolidation on the programming side because you have to have some pain to inflict, a little bit anyway. You can't just... So that's...
I saw a great blurb somewhere in the last week or two that a lot of content providers were looking to open negotiations with Comcast because they felt they'd be under such scrutiny that this would be a great time to negotiate a favorable deal. So, you know, maybe there's a silver lining. I agree. I think consolidation is going to continue. It's going to continue on both sides, and we live in a world of leverage.
Right.
Yeah, I would disagree.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so we have to ask the ad marketplace outlook question, but I'm more interested in how you're looking at a lot of rating points are aggregating between now C3 and C7. How are you looking at that, and is that something you want to migrate towards or better?
I think there'll be some of it. I think it's more of a broadcast question than it is, or an issue for broadcast than it is for cable. I have no doubt but that you'll see some, who knows what the market will do. You'll see some of it. And it'll work for some advertisers and not for others. I mean,
are you for it? I mean, what's your opinion? Are you advocating for it, or are you feel that broadcast will resolve? I mean, what's your thoughts on it?
We're not advocating for it.
Yeah, you're not advocating for it.
Long term, we're advocating for it. We're seeing a gradual increase in the amount of viewership that moves out past the 3rd day. Right now on cable, I think it was roughly 2%, 2.5%. Of an increase between 3 and 7. That's also recognizing that C7 is probably a difficult issue for a lot of categories. Right. So, it calls into question.
Well, and also you have 3 weeks till the data comes in, right? Which is going to be a challenge.
No, that is a challenge, and I would advocate for our originals. It would probably help them too. We'd probably do pretty well with it.
But we currently have some deals that are on a metric other than 3. We have some 7s. We have secondary guarantees on, behavioral data. So I think the question becomes, does the marketplace tolerate these different forms of currency, and how do we all deal with those different kinds of deals and stewarding against that kind of an environment?
Can you envision selling across, because you all have big portfolios, instead of selling brand by brand, selling across your portfolio like digital does on behavioral targeting or lifestyle targeting? I mean, you can do it within your own ecosystem and really do automated buying that way. Do you see that in your future? Do you see that something you're interested in doing, or are you still focused brand by brand as you kind of, I mean, Eric, you have so much cross audience.
Yeah, so I envision us, the C3, C7, we're live, so that's not going to be an influence in our space. If I had a piece of content, an ad running, I'd probably want to count it if that was my, influence my business with the networks and whatnot. Yeah, and for us, it's going to be, there's a lot of opportunity, on a real-time basis to be able to advertise on every screen and deciding which screens to advertise on around that. So we're doing a big initiative. We spent a lot of money this last year launching Project Blueprint. We have a lot of fellow cable networks and media companies who have come on board to help us have a single source measurement of 5 platforms within the home and be able to finally hit the holy grail, hopefully, of what's unduplicated reach versus what's frequency against the home, whether it's a tablet, smartphone, radio, DVR playback device, or just the television screen. And we have a few waves of data of that, and I think at some point I could envision that becoming something that could be currency, not now. Now it's shaping strategy and allowing us to provide insights on consumer behavior. But down the road, I would see us wanting to go to a model like that.
So in this new world of cross-viewing, do we look at reach frequency differently? Like it always was, if you want reach, you want to be a multi-platform, but shouldn't there be some sort of frequency because you're hitting people in different environments, so you're driving that message in a different way? So doesn't the reach frequency model sort of have to evolve in this new world?
We're doing a series of, we're looking at we're doing an ad tracker across, we have 23 different advertisers who've gone through this study, so we've developed category level data. And we can tell what the impact of mobile video is in terms of the speed that it has to achieve what it's trying to achieve and the promise of what it can achieve, and how that correlates differently than television, than the magazine business, than radio, than desktop video. And I think from our standpoint, we're trying to help influence the insights around that to customers, because I do think that frequency is not a one-fit
Right. Well,
model.
it's sort of like
Project
this funnel.
Blueprint help with that? I've heard a lot about it, and I don't know too much about it.
Project Blueprint has helped.
Yeah.
It has helped about it, and it's helped us to get, and I think we're, again, a year from now, we're going to be in a lot even stronger place. But look at a lot of our businesses based on being the second screen to something that we don't have the rights to.
Right.
If you look at a mobile device usage, the 20 biggest days that we have are NFL Sundays, where we don't have any product,
Right.
and going to be Thursday and Friday this week with the March Madness tournament. And so we have to get ourselves wrapped around the idea that, how we interact with the television screen, even when we don't have that, that's something that's very important to us.
So with like a company like Comcast having 30% of the homes, all of a sudden you have set-top box data at scale. Do we see set-top box data is that really the holy grail? Is that where everything sort of comes together and one sort of ecosystem where you can get behavioral? Oh, I see a frown there. Go ahead,
No, it's not a
Arlene.
frown. I just think it has to be merged with something. It can't just be the set-top box data. They still have to get demographic information. There has to be more done. It's not there.
I think we look at that as a huge targeting opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
Except for the fact that we really can't get at that data.
Right.
So
We can't get at the data, and you have set-top box data across a number of distributors, right?
Well, that's
You
what I'm saying. So you have
mobile
now
companies
Comcast
that
that could have a pretty
data.
big footprint and then you'd have
Every
your
over-the-top device is going to have its own data. The challenge, I think, for the system is that you have such a fragmented level of data. How are you going to merge it into one that works on a national basis?
and then mobile just
for customers.
complicates it all.
And that's one of
Even
the
that much
huge
more so.
concerns we have about a company like Comcast having access to that data and selling with the benefit of that data when we don't have it. So that's a huge concern for us.
Okay, so we're almost out of time. Thank you guys for coming. I know that it was a tough trip for most of you to get here, but everybody at 4A's appreciates it. I appreciate it. Any closing remarks? What does TV look like in 5 years?
The only closing remark I have, and we're doing our best to use all kinds of data and big data and any kind of data we can get, but the hits that we've had so far, the successes we've had so far, have really been on the instinct of the people inside the company. I mean, Mad Men, I was told by a very smart marketing person, a programming person, stay as far away from this as you possibly can, when I should, which of course would have been very difficult for me to do. And I will just say, up until this point, and I'm sure we can get better at it, but those shows, Portlandia, a lot of them that we have, they were
So they were
smart
still gut-
stuff.
they were
They
still
were
gut
just taste and
decisions.
judgment, and
Yeah.
sometimes you can't. I read that there were all these things put into an algorithm for what do you call for the Spacey thing, the Netflix. You have to have a good show. It's a good show. If they didn't have a good show, they could have put all kinds of things together, and then what?
Eric, any?
I think television looks the same in 5 years. I think how it's transacted is incrementally different, and I think how the consumer behavior around how they're consuming television will be radically different.
Radically different.
Yeah.
Mel?
Mine's only going to change in one way. I have a 60-inch television, and I hope that in 5 years it's at least going to be about
108.
80.
108.
As long as you can get it on, as long as you can get it in the luggage rack on the plane.
More comfortable chair and a bigger TV.
All right, well, thank you guys.
Thanks, Mary Ann. Thanks
Thank you,
very
Mary
much.
Ann.